So I'm assuming you wouldn't know.
She's here this week and I'm so mad. It's sold out. And I was gonna like, I love me some T. Kelly.
fill every seat, so if you have a seat near you, just kind of raise your hand, point it out, make a friend very quickly. Okay. Wow. Welcome everybody to SLI7 Module 3 here in Atlanta. We had a kickoff dinner last night at, is it Mommy's? Mommy's Rocky Bottom. Yeah. And there was a great kickoff dinner for the participants and some of our guests. So welcome to you who are here for the first time. And for some of you that don't know, SLI is what I'd say is one of our very significant high leverage leadership development programs in Crew. It's designed to be a 1-week module over 2-year period of development. And it's designed actually to grow someone's character as a leader, their competencies as a leader, and their capacity to lead at higher levels. And we do that by using what we call a 5E developmental experience. And that is the issue of environment, a leadership-rich environment, helping create an environment that just, it smells of, it reeks of, it feels like leadership. And then the second thing we want to do is expose our participants to leaders within their community, their collegial community, but also to leaders like you. And then also we want to give them experiences that give them an opportunity to test their leadership and grow their capacity. We also want them to be evaluated in the process of their leadership so they can have good feedback, grow their self-awareness. And I'm leaving out another one, and is that exposure, environment, evaluation, experiences, and education, yes, the educational part, which is the equipping of leadership. And really what you're going to experience today is a culmination of all those 5 things coming together in this one day. So we want to welcome you, and again, our theme this week is called Abide and Execute. What we're focusing on this week, as you gathered here, is really the role of a change agent as a leader. We want our leaders that are part of this program to learn to understand change, to do the research related to change, and then to be able to execute change organizationally. But we also want them to be listening to the Lord's voice, and that's where the abiding part of leadership comes in. So part of the week, we're going to focus on slowing down our pace and listening to the Lord, and even developing some practices to abide more effectively with the Lord. And it's also, as you'll notice on your tables, one of our other themes, a sub-theme is movement. And so obviously Crew is a movement of people that are banded together as multiplying disciples to seek to do something to reach the world and using gifts, to be synergistic in how we use our gifts and abilities. But we're here in Atlanta, home of the civil rights movement. It's an opportunity for us to look at one change agent, and that's Martin Luther King. And so what you'll see on your tables are quotes as we kind of anchor what we're doing in that context as well. So I think it's going to be a very rich week. So especially for the participants, we want to, again, tell you we've been praying for you for today. I've been praying a breath prayer over and over, praying that God would show up as your stronghold and that you'd experience Him as your stronghold today. But we want to welcome you as our guest. And around the room, I wish I could just name everybody sitting here. That would mean I'd be incredibly powerful to be able to do that. But what I would say is around this room you have sponsors. Some of you have sponsored these 5 strategic action learning challenge projects, and you have listened to, you've directed, you have cajoled, you've done a number of things to help these participants stay on track with these strategic projects. Some of you are stakeholders, so you've been interviewed maybe twice over. And you've taken questions, hard questions, from the participants. Some of you are coaches. Some of you are really basically, some of you probably had to talk them off the ledge a few times as they've been through this grueling kind of project. And then others of you are leaders who have even given our participants space to be able to work on these strategic projects, or leaders that have been there to encourage them along the way as they develop as leaders. So we want to welcome you to our time today. We've been talking about abiding and executing And I mentioned the theme of movements. And even though we're about strategy and we're about movements, one of the things about SLI that's significant is that we care a lot about story. We want, well, the gospel's about story. It's about God knowing us and us also knowing one another. And so one of the things we do in the context of our SLI experience is to help our participants learn to tell their story. And today you're going to get a chance to actually, we're going to start that way. We're going to have a chance for you to listen to one of the stories of one of our participants. And we use what we call I am from poems. Many of you have heard that. And in poetic form, we tell our stories. And so what we'd like you to do, as Carrie Thorne will come up here in a moment, as Carrie Thorne reads her I am from poem, we'd like you to listen to her story. And we usually ask our participants to pay attention. What did you hear in the story? What didn't you hear? And then, because there's a story that each one of us have. It tells us about our ethnicity, it tells us our culture, our family of origin, those kinds of things. So I want to bring Carrie up here as we emphasize the importance of story. Carrie, where are you seated? Oh, right there. Okay, thanks. What did you hear in Carrie's story? As you listened to her, what are some of the things or themes that you picked up in her story? This is open for anybody here. So.
Too many people from Texas.
The Texas part of it. Many people. Thank you. Yeah, what else did you hear in her story?
Strong women.
Strong women. Yeah.
Performance as a drug.
Yeah, performance is a drug. How many of you can relate to that part of her story? Probably most of you in this room. Yeah, performance is a drug. What else did you hear? Pretty fascinating.
Independence.
We'll go back. Yeah, Tim?
Humor being a weapon and a shield.
Yeah, humor being,
Resonated with that, yeah.
yeah, humor being a weapon and a shield, maybe a bit of a defense mechanism. Although you didn't say that. Yeah, back there, I heard someone. Yeah.
I was thinking themes of independence and conformity.
Yeah, the themes of independence and conformity. Anything else?
Lonely and not known.
Yeah, the idea of being lonely and not known. Yeah, just to pause and think about that part of how God shaped that. We can use that in Carrie's story as well. Yes, Tom.
Most real everywhere but the church.
Oh, most real everywhere except in the context of the church. So maybe pretending, right? Okay. Anything else you heard, you picked up from Carrie's very powerful poem?
Yeah, negative emotions unexpressed.
Negative emotions unexpressed. How many of you can identify with that? There really are no negative emotions, by the way. It is what it is, right? They become negative when you repress them and don't ever express them. It's a little soundbite. It's my radio show. Anything else? Anything else you picked up?
A ton of dissonance.
Yeah, a lot of dissonance in her story. What do you think was behind that? This is really not, I wouldn't really be able to
I think a desire for a better,
Yeah.
a better something, and not having experienced that.
Yeah, a yearning for something better but not experiencing it. Okay, well, yes, Sandy.
Books as portals to other worlds.
Yeah, both as portals to other worlds. Yes.
The faithfulness of Jesus in her life.
Yeah, that theme of Jesus intervening. His
I'm
faithfulness.
wondering if worship got her through, because she had references to him.
Yeah. Theme of worship. Carrie, where are you? Oh, back there now. Okay, you're under that table back there. You know, I could not see you. I think it's okay. Yes. The theme of worship. Anything else? This is really great, Carrie. Thanks for what you did and shared. Okay, I'd like someone would be willing to pray for Carrie. We typically do that after these poems. Would somebody be willing to pray for Carrie as you heard her themes? Would you be willing to pray? I'm not going to pick on anybody, but okay, back there, Annalena.
You want me to stay?
Would you come up here and take the mic? Yeah. I mean, I know Jesus can hear, even if we can't, but let's join with you.
God, we thank you for Carrie. We thank you for the story that she was able to share with us this morning. And just being able to peek into her life. God, what a blessing it is. God, we pray that you continue to guide her steps and her family's steps. We thank you that her story would bring impact into many lives in the future, God. And we just pray that you continue to heal whatever is from the past and the present, and that you would just give her strength and courage for her future. We're grateful that she shared it with us. And I pray that as we even walk out these doors, that we would just carry a little bit of Carrie in our hearts, knowing that you are a great God that does great things through many people. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, all. Thank you again, Carrie. Well, just one reminder is we use a tool called TopaChat in our SLI community. You're going to actually be able to use that a lot during the course of our time here. And it's an app that you load on your phone. There's some instructions behind me. I won't go through all those. But that's going to be one way you can give feedback during the course of today with the participants. And so if you would draw your attention on that, even though we're supposed to have our wireless turned off, that's a challenge. Okay, so but I'll leave that up to you all. So you decide if you want to obey. Chris? Okay, during the breaks, okay. But I want to introduce, again, SLI really is a product of many people, and obviously the Lord himself. And one of the key sponsors of SLI is Steve Sellers. So I'm going to have Steve Sellers come up here, and especially as we kick off Action Learning, have Steve Sellers, our U.S. National Director, also Global VP, to share a few words. Steve.
Thanks, Mark. Carrie, I just want to also express appreciation for your vulnerability. My heart connected to so many different parts of that. So thanks. And I think for the rest of you, as you have opportunities to do that, it really is a helpful time to connect into what people are experiencing and get an insight into where we're going. So today is really about the Action Learning Challenge, but it's significant that Mark and the team start off with an I Am Front one, because as much as it is about the organization and about solving problems and helping the organization get better, the theme is about abiding, and it's about connecting with people. And so to be able to connect with people who share vulnerably about their experience and who they are, don't miss that this is really as significant a part as all the other things that you're going to do. And so thanks for doing that. And then thank you to the rest of you for what you're going to do today with your Action Learning Challenge. I know you cannot wait for this day to be finished. That you have put a lot of hard work and time and attention into real organizational issues that oftentimes plague us for decades. Some are woven into the fabric of who we are, that we have to find the thread and pull it out. But what you're doing is really significant. And so I wanted just to say thanks in the beginning, before you even do your presentations, for the amount of effort and energy and heart and labor that you've poured into these things. Obviously, they're of interest to us from a leadership perspective. There are people from the U.S. leadership team and throughout the different divisions, and their ministry leaders are here because we really care about what you have to say. I think you've discovered by now that this is not just a token exercise to keep you busy for 6 months. That we really have issues that we want to address, and we really appreciate how you've leaned into those, and so we're looking forward to hearing from you what it is that you believe that God is leading us to do. And so we're here to listen. We're here to receive what you've done, what you've worked on. A lot of those things will then move into the future in terms of how do we metabolize that? What do we accept and implement just as it's been presented? What needs more work? How do we think about it differently? So no matter how it moves out of here, the work you've done is significant and is going to really be a huge part of what we do as we move forward into the future. And so before we move forward, it's okay, I'm just going to pray for all of you. And what I'd like you to do, if you're an SLI participant, I would like you to stand, and we would just like to, as a group, to pray for you before we start today. So if you are not a participant and are near one, that you can just put your hand on them or stretch out your hand to them. Let me pray. Father, we just thank you for this group of people, for this group of leaders who you have called to be a part of Crew, and the pleasure it is for all of us to run the race with them. Thank you for their labor, for their heart, for their willingness to lean into issues, for how they have worked to become a team as they've figured out how they can utilize one another's strengths and how they can compensate for weaknesses. Thank you for what they've done and for what they're going to do today. Father, I pray that today, as a hand is either laid upon them or stretched out toward them, that they would feel your blessed touch upon them, that they would sense your presence, and the anxiety and the nervousness that you would just take away, that they would sense that you are very pleased with who they are, and that they're in a safe place where we're here as a leadership team and others throughout the ministry to hear what they have to say. That you would give them confidence and courage and a sense of being relaxed to be able to say what they feel like they need to say. Would you encourage their hearts? Would you minister to them? And would you bless us all because of what they're going to do? In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your leadership, sponsorship. I'm going to turn this over to Dee Dee Rush. Dee Dee's on our SLI design team. And she's an incredible leader. She's led globally. She's led in the campus ministry for many years and globally, and she's been a part of leadership development. in the work for many years. And so Dee Dee's a fabulous leader, and is really, her and her husband Barry both have really helped spearhead our Action Learn Challenge process. So she's going to explain it a little bit more for you, so you can really be the best participant today as we hear these proposals. So Dee Dee, come on up here, turn it to you. Give a hand to Dee Dee.
No organization can move ahead very fast, or any faster than it is, unless they're developing leaders quickly and efficiently. And we want to see movements everywhere. We need new leaders everywhere. So that's why we do what we do. And Steve, I want to thank you. As long as I've known Steve, I've never known you not to have leader development as one of your top priorities. So all of us thank you for your support, involvement, and engagement in what we're doing with SLI. I appreciate it. The rest of you, thank you for being here also. Some of you, as Mark said, have been involved in this whole process, and thank you for that. And some of you are just getting involved in it, but all of you are here and taking some of your time to be here, so we appreciate your support in being here today also. So, no, he's going to do it. That's fine. So, Okay, so what I'm going to do real quickly, I know some of you are very familiar with Action Learning, and this will be a repeat for you, but there are some people in the room who it's new for, so I'm just going to give a quick, what is Action Learning and why do we use Action Learning as a tool? Action Learning is actually a tool for problem solving, but at the same time, your problem solving, it's building leadership, it's building leaders, it's building teams, it's building organizations, and so that's why we enjoy using it, because it does more than one thing. Obviously, it has two parts. It has action and learning, and that's the difference in action learning and a working group that we add the learning part in. So in the action part, we are asking our teams to take a challenge that they've been given. As Mark mentioned, these are challenges that have been hindering our growth or keeping us from getting to our mission as quickly. So they take this challenge and they look at the obstacles and they clarify the obstacles and they figure out the problem cluster surrounding the obstacles. And so sometimes this hurts our heads and sometimes it hurts our coaches' heads and our sponsors' heads that we're going through this, but that's the first step of the process. The second part of the action is that they then begin to identify and explore what are some options that our organization could use to get past these obstacles or deal with these obstacles so that we can move further along in our process to the mission, do it more quickly, more efficiently. So that's the action part of it. The learning part is just as important, and I know many of you who've been involved in these kind of things will agree with me that if you don't have a way to focus on the learning, if we don't have action learning coaches who are bringing up the learning week to week and focusing on that, the group will revert to just action and there will be no learning because there's the urgency to get to the solution. So that's why we have the learning part in there. That's the learning part of action learning. So we intentionally leverage the learning. Okay. Why did we choose action learning? There are other problem-solving processes out there. Number one, with SLI, our key result that we're looking for is leaders developed. Okay, so with action learning, let me go back a little step before that. Leaders developed. The next question we asked ourselves were, how do we develop leaders? You know, you can read, there are a lot of books, there are a lot of ways to develop leaders. What we chose to use is a philosophy that the Center for Creative Leadership researched. And in their handbook, they give a summary of their results. And they found that if you provide an environment that has challenge, support, and feedback, that leaders are developed more effectively. And so as you listen today, you'll hear these things included in there, and they also flow right along with the 5 E's that Mark was mentioning. You'll see those parts of it too. So what we do is we first begin to give them the challenge, and the challenge can't be some little problem that a group could fix in a week or solve in a week. It can't be something that's not significant. It has to be something that's significant and strategic and urgent, as Mark was saying a little bit earlier. These are things, Mark said, these are things that are holding us back in reaching our mission for some reason. So we give them the strategic challenge, and the first things we hear are, this is ambiguous, this is not clear, or this is too complex. And things like, we'll hear comments, every time we start one, we hear comments like, I don't think we can figure this out. This is too big, this is too complex. Or, I've never worked in this area before, I don't know anything about what they're asking us to research. So that's on purpose, guys. Yeah, you're welcome. So, anyway, so that's the challenge part of what we're asking them to do. If you think about that definition for a minute, that's what a change agent is. When you look back at the challenge, support, and feedback, the change agent is a person who takes the problem and looks at the obstacles, helps the team or the organization work through those obstacles, and then finds a solution for it. This is what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to be a change agent. And I think they've all felt that, the effects, the stresses, the struggles, they've put themselves in your shoes for the first time to see what that involves. Okay, so after the challenge, we need the support. The Center for Creative Leadership, the second thing they found we need in an environment is support. We give them support by education, which you notice Mark mentioned is one of the 5 E's. We train them in everything they're going to need to do in this process. We don't just throw them into the deep end and say, if you swim, you're a leader. So we train them in team building, we train them in research, we train them in how to work with a sponsor, how to lead up in an organization. Everything they're going to need to do, we give them that part of it. The third thing that we do is feedback. That was their third discovery, that if you include feedback with the challenge and support, that leaders will grow faster and more effectively. So they get a lot of feedback. They give each other feedback during their meetings. They do a lot of long distance meetings, and they give each other feedback through a team process check, where they're asked, they ask each other things like, how well did the meeting go? Did we stay on focus? How is our trust level? And then they answer at the end of that, well, what can we do next time to take it one step better in that? So they're giving feedback there. They have a personal coach that's giving them feedback. We're giving them feedback. You're going to give them feedback today and ask questions. You guys are going to be part of their development process today. So I'm excited about that. They won't have to be just listening to us coaches. Again, they can learn from you. Okay. Let me just say one thing that's not up there. Mark mentioned the exposure, and one thing we're excited about with you guys that have been working with them and getting to know them, and then those of you who are here today and will get to know them better, we're excited about their exposure to you. They've lived somewhat in your shoes. They know now what you go through, and then you all have also gotten to know them better, and you will get to know them better even today. So we've had exposure both ways, from them to you and you to them, and that's exciting for me to see. So, okay, real quickly here, the flow. There are going to be 5 presentations. This is one more than we've normally had, so we're excited about that. The first 30 minutes, you're going to hear each team give you their presentation. They'll show you some research they've done. They'll show you the solutions they've come to. So that will take 30 minutes. Within that, the last 5 minutes of that, they're going to share one little snapshot of what they learned. If you want to see all of what they learned, you can go to their proposal, and they have the whole thing written up. So you'll get one snapshot. After they do that, you don't have all the proposals yet, and you can also get it digitally. I'll tell you about that later. So after that, we'll have a Q&A time, and this is where you get to contribute to their learning. So I would suggest, as you're listening to the presentations, to jot down things you're curious about, things you want to know more about, things you didn't understand. Jot down questions that you want to ask the teams afterwards during the Q&A time. And I'm telling you, you can ask as hard a question as you want to, and you probably are not going to stump them because they've been studying this and working on this for 6 months. So feel free to ask whatever question you need to. Sorry, guys. And then we're actually going to also have just a few minutes at the end of the Q&A where you can tell the team what is something you really liked about what they did. So be thinking about that and writing that down too, giving them some positive feedback. And then after that, their sponsor will get up and share some appreciation what they enjoy about working with this team. So that's the flow of today. We're going to have the first team come up in just a second, but before they do, where did Gwen go? There you are. Okay. Gwen, we've had the blessing of having Gwen as our team sponsor, and so I've really enjoyed that. Our team has enjoyed being with her. She's done a great job asking questions to make them think and think again and think again. So Gwen is going to come up, and she's going to pray for all of the teams as they're, she's going to pray for all of the teams that are going to come up today, and then we'll get started.
Morning.
Morning.
Father, God our Savior, thank you, Lord, for another day that you have made, Lord. Thank you for everyone in this room, Father, that you have brought us together for such a time as this, Lord. And we're so grateful and thankful for all the teams and all the hard work that they put in, Lord, because we are faced with challenges daily, Lord, and they took on these challenges to help the organization overall, Lord, give focus to each of these challenges. Father, I pray for each group as they come up. First, Lord, that you would fill them. Fill them with your spirit, Lord. Give them your wisdom, Lord. You tell us that if any man lacks wisdom, Lord, that we can ask of you, Father, so that anything that they're unsure of, Lord, to help them to come to you and ask you that you would give them wisdom and give it to them freely. And then, Father, we just pray for the listening ears, Father. We pray now, Lord, that you would humble our hearts in any areas, Lord, that where the enemy may be working or not wanting us to hear or listen. Father, would you just please right now begin to move away or chip away anything that would keep us from hearing from them, Lord, from the work that they've done. Lord, we're so grateful and thankful that they spent the time doing this, Lord, the time that many of us don't have because there are so many other responsibilities and things that we have to focus on. So we pray over each of these proposals, Lord. We pray that you would give us wisdom as leader as we begin to move forward and show us how and where we need to move forward on each proposal, Lord. Again, we thank you for your grace, Lord. We thank you for your mercy. We thank you for your love, God. And we're also grateful and thankful that we can come together as crew, as part of the body, Lord, working together, Lord, to fulfill the Great Commission, to reach every. And Father, all of these challenges or action learning challenges, Lord, are about every and how we can reach more and more people for your name's sake. So Lord, again, we thank you for this morning. We ask you to bless it. In your Son, Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Gwen. Okay, I have to try to not be prejudiced with this first team because this is my team. And I could tell you something wonderful about each one of them up there, but I won't do that because that wouldn't be fair. So the challenge that they've been given is from the Oneness and Diversity team. And they have been working on how to get more non-dominant culture staff in the pool for consideration for upper level leadership teams, mission critical leadership roles. So I'm excited about what they've prepared and what they've been working on, but here they are.
Picture it. Jerusalem, 33 AD. You see the most famous table experience of all time. the Lord's Supper. There you see Jesus, surrounded by all his disciples gathered together at the table. But at this same table, Jesus will experience challenges and barriers, but nothing will stop him from adopting all of us into his family. Like Jesus, you're sitting at the table and you're about to learn about a challenge that is facing Crew today. I'm Felicia. The United States is composed of a diverse nation of people. And Crew believes that having diverse leaders will help ensure that there is a movement everywhere. However, Crew is composed of majority-dominant culture. So the question becomes, how do we ensure that non-dominant culture people are considered when mission-critical roles become vacant? Daryl and Gwen Smith sponsored this action learning team and wanted us to propose a plan to help see if we can make that happen. After 6 long months, I love y'all, but 6 long months, we are here to present our proposal to you to help ensure that Crew Senior Leadership Team signifies kingdom diversity. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to ask that you quickly take off one of your shoes. Those of you watching online, you can participate too. When Jesus was sitting at the table, he encountered a barrier that one of his disciples did not want his feet washed. Now, I venture to say that you're probably sitting there feeling a little uncomfortable, vulnerable, exposed. You may even be distracted with thoughts like, oh my gosh, I don't want anybody to see my foot. I have a hole in my sock. My toenail polish is chipped. I need a pedicure. But that's okay. Because when you start having conversations about diversity, these are some of the same feelings that kind of pop up. Vulnerability, awkwardness. You might even be sitting there, hadn't even touched it yet, but you might be angry that I asked you to take your shoe off. This is also a feeling that can pop up when you're having diverse conversations about diversity. So, at this time, I want you to understand that it's okay that you might not understand everything that we're getting ready to share. But what we do hope is that you will stay at the table, that you will engage with us. And that as you're sitting there, that you will also be self-aware of any barriers that might be popping up between the 18 inches between your head and your heart. So go ahead and breathe, put your shoe back on, and we will have Chris who will come share with us about our research.
Thank you, Felicia. God has created us with diversity. And God's diversity of people and our testimony of unity are what's going to bring us all to the table so we can be like what Revelation 7:9 talks about, that there'll be people from every tongue, tribe, and nation worshiping before the throne and before the Lamb. We're going to be using 2 words interchangeably today. It's going to be dominant culture or white majority culture and non-dominant culture or ethnic minorities. We have quite a large proposal, and it's written up with many different things, but on page 10 you can see that Crew does have diversity, a diversity of ministries. We're reaching out to ethnic minorities all over the country. We have ministries like Nations, Impact, Destino, many of them. Yet at the moment, our supportive staff have self-identified as only 9% ethnic minority. That's in stark contrast to what the U.S. Census says. Our country is at about 40% ethnic minority and continuing to increase. So in order for Crew to continue to be relevant for years to come, we don't want to be just a diversity of ministries. We want to be a diverse ministry. We don't want to be a diversity of ministries, we want to be a diverse ministry. Well, the research phase of our project is what I'm going to share about. We spent a lot of time understanding the scope and what's the current realities of where we are within Crew. We brainstormed with Gwen, with our sponsor, why we don't have ethnically diverse leadership. We wanted to confirm or deny thoughts and even assumptions that many people have about ethnicity within our organization. So we created a strategic plan and started to pull all this together. Our research was not arbitrary. We actually hired a group called Precise Data Consulting out of Little Rock, Arkansas to help us analyze our interview information, our survey results. They validated our techniques, and they helped us analyze that. So our solutions are based on that analysis. What did we do? First, we interviewed 58 leaders in our organization, most all of our senior leadership. Many were at the executive level leadership, and 37 were ethnic minority leaders in over 100 hours of interviews. Through these interviews, we began to see trends, things that were happening that people were sharing. We got to see some consistency in that, but we wanted to go deeper and broader. So we developed a survey with 66 questions. We were told, that's way too many questions. Crew asks these surveys all the time. We have survey fatigue. You can't ask that. But we were amazed when we touched a nerve because we had one of the highest response rates ever for a survey within Crew. 2,200 staff responded. 1,459 of them were our supported RMO staff. That included over half of all of our ethnic minority supported staff, which is a huge sample size. So here's where we began to see the real divides of opportunity between our ethnic minority and white majority staff. This also brought up many other strategic issues that Rob's going to go into in just a moment. But what I'm going to share with you on the top of page 20 is just the tip of the iceberg of the information and results that we received. One of the key things was that even though non-dominant culture staff desire to move into leadership at a higher rate than white culture staff, we're seeing them asked to move up at 10% less. 61% of our non-dominant culture staff have felt isolated or misunderstood during meetings and gatherings. These types of experiences are what we learned was called unconscious bias. It's representative of unconscious bias in our dominant culture structures. We learned that all of us have unconscious bias. We'll hear a little bit more about that later, but it's the unintended ways that we see others, we treat others, and it's been based on how we've been raised in our current norms or our current context. And our dominant culture white staff create structures and norms that are foreign to many of our ethnic minorities and result in expectation that they conform to our norms. Charlotte Crabb is part of the Crew High School Ministry in New York, and she stated the minority culture style of leadership isn't as respected as the majority staff. And what majority culture staff unintentionally communicate is you don't know what you're doing. On page 24, you see a survey result that 26% of our staff don't have a clear understanding of what they need to move up in leadership. Well, currently SLI has been the main way to retrain and equip leaders for our organization. And that's great. We've been doing a great job with that, but we need to start earlier. So our solutions are looking into that. How can we see we can work with getting people recognized, advocating for them, and helping them? And Alethea is going to share more about that. Well, you might have heard of the Good Old Boy Network, or it's not what you know, but who you know. On the top of page 28, 75% of our dominant culture staff and 82% of our non-dominant culture staff admitted that the way you get a job within Crew is through your relational network. For non-dominant culture staff, this leads to a self-reinforcing cycle. The dominant culture staff are hiring people that are like them and continuing to hire people like them. And we see that happening. Well, our solutions for number 3 and 4 that you're going to hear about from Renee are dealing with that. How can we get better cooperation between our organization and our leadership, our ministries, our oneness and diversity in order for that to happen? So, what if I told you we had a way that we could help our organization increase our talent pool, strengthen our approach to our target audiences, create greater employee satisfaction, and provide an environment for better decision-making and innovation? Well, that's exactly what the study Diversity Matters by McKinsey & Company states. That when you have diversity, your opportunity for impact increases. When you have diversity, your opportunity for impact increases. So Alethea is going to share with us a bit more about our first couple solutions.
Thanks, Chris. So as Chris mentioned, there are some significant barriers affecting the non-dominant culture staff, and so I'm going to share about our first two solutions to hopefully help with that. The first one being creating new roles to advocate for our non-dominant culture staff. For me personally, being a non-dominant culture staff person, I have to acknowledge that I've had a really unique experience on staff in the last 7 years. Not only have I had great intentional development, I have had staff advocate for me, which have helped me be in the positions that I'm in from a leadership standpoint. But overall, that is not true for most of our non-dominant culture staff, and we would love to see that change. So our first solution, to create new roles. First one being what we're calling a oneness and diversity strategist. So this will be a focused role on the US LDHR core team. This role will advocate for the 3 focuses of the oneness and diversity team, starting with our ethnic minority staff. This role will address dominant culture systems and unconscious bias affecting our non-dominant culture staff that Chris just mentioned. And this role would report to the US LDHR Director, Mark Redder, also to Daryl and Gwen, Oneness and Diversity Directors. It would also be the main collab focal point between Oneness and Diversity and the LDHR Department to ensure our staff are being advocated for. Second role will be what we're proposing is our ethnic minority facilitator. So this role would sit on the Oneness and Diversity Direct team under Daryl and Gwen's leadership. This role would also advocate for our non-dominant culture staff and facilitate avenues so that they can be known by leaders, developed as leaders, and considered for leadership roles. This role would also coordinate what we're calling the Oneness and Diversity Leadership Path, which I'm going to touch on in a moment. And they would work closely with the Oneness and Diversity strategists, connect with other LDHR leaders in the organization, and collaborate with the Oneness and Diversity Indirect team, which are representatives from the various ministries and crew. And the third role we're proposing to create is what we're calling a Oneness and Diversity Mentor. This role will be a combination of mentoring and coaching to ensure the development of our non-dominant culture staff. This role is meant to supplement what supervisors should already be doing with their staff members. And this will be a secondary role for someone that would be in this role. So they'd be supervised by the ethnic minority facilitator, but they would still report to their primary direct report. Moving on to our second solution. As Chris said, only 26% of our non-dominant culture staff have a clear understanding of what it takes to move up in leadership. And while we acknowledge that SLI is fantastic, because it is, even in the last 6 months it's been great, it's not enough. For 30 leaders over a 2-year span to be developed, it's great, but it's really not enough. And so what we're proposing for our second solution is what we're calling the Oneness and Diversity Leadership Path. This leadership path will be funneled through Oneness and Diversity in conjunction with LDHR. This will be a mentorship program for our non-dominant culture staff that are interested in moving up in leadership. A few things that we're asking for those that will be a part of this is that first and foremost, they'll get to opt in. We don't want to force anything on our staff members, and so our non-dominant culture staff will have an opportunity to opt in to be a part of this. They need to be interested in moving up in leadership and have a willingness to grow in their leadership potential. They'd also be committing to a 1 year of career planning and development, working with their designated Oneness and Diversity mentor, and also have a willingness to have their contact information and qualifications shared amongst the various ministries within crew that Renee is going to touch on now. So Renee is going to come up and share about our next two solutions.
Thanks, Olivia. So staff are being developed. They're ready for new levels of leadership. How do we know who these staff are? On pages 28 through 31, we propose that crew utilize a talent management system that provides us with a comprehensive view of our staff. Crew currently uses PeopleSoft to track employee data and process payroll. PeopleSoft contains a talent management feature that Crew isn't currently using but has access to and is included in our costs. This feature is called the Employee Snapshot. The Employee Snapshot can create profiles for each staff member. And these profiles can share staff's job history, competencies, spiritual maturity, education, special projects they've worked on, and even their job interest. It allows leaders and HR administrators to search and filter by these categories, which can help surface potential candidates. Digital Products and Services is currently working on configuring the employee snapshot for testing within their own department, and those working with the tool are excited to know of our interest in using the tool more broadly. So, what would it take to use this tool more broadly? Tracy Stewart with Digital Products and Services said there are two main questions that we need to answer. First, we need to decide what information do we want it to collect. Our team has begun compiling a list of competencies that Crew values as listed in the leadership framework and other resources. This list also includes competencies that are valued by different cultures in their leadership. So we recommend LDHR and O&D collaborate to decide what competencies and other elements to include in this profile. Second, Tracy said we need to determine how are we going to collect the information and keep it updated. For candidates a part of the O&D leadership path, we have made this part of their mentor's job description. Their mentor will work with them to collect the information and regularly update the profile. After piloting the use of the employee snapshot with candidates a part of the O&D leadership path, we recommend expanding use of the tool to all staff, creating a comprehensive database of the talent within Crew, and providing features for us to better steward that talent. The first three steps of our solution are laying the groundwork to address our challenge to ensure qualified, non-dominant culture staff are considered for mission-critical roles in Crew. But this fourth step is crucial. Chris shared earlier that hiring within Crew largely happens through our relational networks. With the employee snapshot, our relational networks are being expanded, but we need to actually consider those outside of who we may know. Those of you in this room who are leading ministries, you direct the future of Crew. And you have the opportunity to set a new direction by adding one step to the leader selection process. This one step will ensure a wider pool of qualified candidates are considered for mission-critical roles. So what is this one step? When you are filling open leadership roles, we ask that your ministry contact the O&D strategist to find out if there are any qualified candidates who you may not be aware of. The O&D strategist can work with the ethnic minority facilitator and use the employee snapshot to surface additional qualified candidates if there are any. They will inform you of these candidates and you can then incorporate them into the job selection process. Considering all qualified candidates will help you make the best decision as you are filling leadership roles in your ministry. We believe this should be a best practice for positions at the executive level or higher, but also believe it can be beneficial for filling roles at various levels, as candidates will be at different places in their leadership journey. As I said before, this step is crucial, and it takes each of you. Will you take this one step to consider those you may not be aware of? Will you consider those that God may be raising up to further lead us in reaching all people for Christ? As we consider the solution, there are some strategic issues that need to be addressed in order for it to succeed to its full potential. And our teammate Rob will share more.
Thank you very much, Renee. Good morning and welcome to the table. By the very nature of being in this room, you are at the table, and it is such a joy and an honor to be here with you, to have been invited here. So thank you for being with us this morning. The table isn't a new theme for us. Crew 17 is all about making room at the table for minorities so that their voice is not lost. And so the call to action from Crew 17 was to invite more minority voices to the table, and encouragingly, many of our dominant culture staff responded to that. They went home, they challenged, they reshuffled their teams, they brought people on, or invited people on. However, the response that some have received left them confused and frustrated, because sometimes rather than gratitude for being invited, the offer was actually turned down. Why was this? Our research revealed that 44% of non-dominant culture staff might turn down a leadership role that they're interested in because of skepticism of the amount of influence they would actually have in that role. So how can we, as leaders at the table, begin to build confidence in our minority staff members that they will have the influence that they need in order to succeed in the roles that we're inviting them into? The first and potentially most challenging part of this process is that we in this room must acknowledge the power and the influence that we have and steward it as a gift. First, before we may respond with power, because it can have a hard connotation, I want us to turn to something that Andy Crouch, who spoke in our last 2 staff conference, something that he said about power. He said, if power is irredeemably negative, none of us would want to admit that we have it. But power is not the opposite of servanthood. Rather, servanthood, ensuring the flourishing of others, is the very purpose of power. One of the most impactful things that I have learned since being on staff with Crew is that leadership is about servanthood, taking the posture of Jesus. And so how do we do this practically in this conversation? The first step, in a very, very practical one, as we are recruiting for the role, we need to make sure that we have a very clear job description. This is what this job does. A cares chart that outlines clear responsibilities and the scope of the influence of the role. Once people have responded to that, we need to enter into the conversation, into the interview, in some very practical ways. And these are not just examples. These are examples of things that we can actually say in the conversation. 1, Jay, I'm committed to your success. Your success is my success. They need to hear that in those conversations. I am your advocate. If you feel that you are not being heard or you are being overlooked, I want you to come to me and talk to me about it so that we can see what needs to be changed or addressed. And the third question that will be uncomfortable is, what can I do to help you succeed? And this is where Jay, I have to ask him, please be honest. Help me help you succeed. Tell me what you need to succeed in this role. And we must be committing to try to meet them in that place. We hope that the vulnerability on both sides of this conversation will lead to learning and growth for both parties. One of the other reasons minority staff were concerned about the influence they would have is that they were the only person of color on the prospective teams. And some of you may be feeling, well, Rob, I would love to have more than just one on my team, but there just aren't that many on staff. You're right. That is a reality, and one that was sadly outside of the scope of our project. And so we are asking that LDHR, O&D, and Mobilization partner together to research some strategies to be able to increase the percentage of non-dominant culture staff here on staff. But one thing I want to be very clear about is that recruiting more non-dominant culture staff doesn't just mean going to more diverse schools or going in new places. It means we must become an organization with a culture that is more attractive to ethnic minorities. In our interviews with minority staff, we asked why they might turn down a leadership role. One of the most common responses was that because the role required them to leave their community. To illustrate why, I want to share with you the story of Jamal. Jamal grew up in a low-income community, but was identified as a leader from an early age. His community and church came together and came around him financially to send him to college. While in college, Jamal got involved with Crew. He became a student leader, he went on summer missions, and now he has just finished raising support after 2.5 years. He's returned to his community on staff with Crew High School. He is going into the schools. He is making a difference in his community. Parents of the students that he's discipling have joined his support team, and the community is beginning to change. At the same time, Crew has identified Jamal as a potential leader, and they want to invite him into national leadership, which would require him moving to Orlando. However, Jamal feels caught in the middle. To leave where he is will vacate a spot that no one else in his community could fill. And so, as a matter of stewardship of the influence that he has, he is going to turn down that role. Something else that's going on in the back of his mind is that he's not sure if his support would come with him, because many people are investing in him in order to invest in the community. What this story represents is that non-dominant culture staff are reticent to leave, not because of comfort, but as matters of stewardship. And so we recommend that ministries evaluate the possibility of leadership roles, operating remotely, and encourage ministries to create more flexible working arrangements when at all possible. And so this brings us to our final point. We have all heard that diversity brings about innovation and high performance. However, this is just not true. David Livermore, the president of the Cultural Intelligence Center, says that more often than not, homogenous teams outperform culturally diverse teams, unless the cultural intelligence of the leaders in the room is high. Let me say this very clearly. Diversity in and of itself does not equal innovation. Diversity on culturally competent teams leads to the highest level of innovation. So one of our key recommendations is to passionately and persistently pursue cultural competence as an organization, some of which is already happening as exemplified by Scott Crocker and his team pulling together resources for the campus ministry. A key way to aid in the growth is for us to have an accurate picture of where we are. Because in reality, we naturally perceive ourselves as better than we are. In the survey, we asked people to grade where they believe themselves, their team, and crew as an organization, where they believe we are as it relates to cultural competence on a scale of 1 to 100. So crew is a 50, our teams are 65s, we are 66. We are all better than the rest of the organization. And so what we need is a tool to help us figure out, where are we actually? Where are we? So we recommend implementing the use of the intercultural development inventory to help our staff and leadership teams assess where they are and how they can grow. And so secondly, we recommend the widespread training on unconscious bias. Lori Payton, one of our SLI coaches and a certified trainer on unconscious bias, said that if you have a brain, you have unconscious bias. And so the challenge is helping people identify where they have it and how to work through it. And we were very excited to learn in our research that Steve Sellers and Gwen and Daryl Smith have commissioned Tara Brady to create a gospel-centered unconscious bias training that would be presented to the U.S. leadership team in March. We are very thankful for the work that they are putting in. We're very thankful that you are at the table with us in this journey. Felicia?
Jesus had a sense of urgency because he knew he was going to a cross. Crew, you need to have a sense of urgency because if you do not take these solutions and implement them, you run the risk of becoming irrelevant to diverse communities. Now Jesus, he's using a towel. In your bags, we have provided each of you a towel because we know that you are a change agent and you will take action. We hope that towel will be a gentle reminder as you're getting ready to step into your future of helping create this change that ensures non-dominant culture individuals are considered for mission critical roles.
The most significant takeaway from the Action Learning Challenge for me, it was actually learning how the organization works. Learning how the organization works and how it makes decisions actually helped me to know how to manage myself and know how to specifically come alongside others and help them in a specific task.
Through this Action Learning Challenge, I've been learning to listen well, to ask the right questions, to build trust, and to laugh together. I've been learning to ask for help and to be interdependent. Serving on this diverse team, my eyes have been opened to how my own perspective has been shaped by my dominant culture, and I've been challenged to think differently. I've been learning to balance the complexities that I find in Crew, appreciating the good things that are happening, while also learning how to lovingly challenge us to something better.
Leading organizational change is both exciting and frustrating, enlightening and confusing, and complex and challenging. And I don't think it was until this Action Learning Challenge experience that I realized just how layered and nuanced leading in an organizational context is and trying to see change big picture. So I'm grateful for the last 6 months. I would say in particular the leadership framework. I feel like this experience has helped me to embrace all aspects of the framework, in particular about being a change agent, which I really feel like I'm at my core. The last 6 months have really shown me where can I celebrate what good is actually happening, to affirm the good before jumping to the change that I see that needs to happen. And so as a change agent, let's celebrate the good, affirm that, and say, how do we see this across the board? And I would say this experience has really helped me to grow in being a change agent.
Managing change is hard, and I've learned a lot through this process. Here's just a few things. One, my work can't be my identity. I am not what I produce. I am Christ, and that has to be what informs how I work. Facilitating a group is about maximizing the time that we have and bringing out the best in the team members. It doesn't necessarily mean that I have to come up with all the ideas. When I'm working on a project, I want to start with the end in mind and work back from there, create the timeline based upon where we want to be, not where we are necessarily. However, my greatest learning is in my character. As things got tough and stress kicked in, I found myself working harder and longer as opposed to praying more and giving more to Christ. And so I decided that I want to be the best husband and dad that I can and work hard into that, and then leave the rest to God if I can't do it. I can't do it all, since I can't do it all.
My biggest takeaway is going to be about relationships. In our leadership framework that we got in the beginning, right, one of the skills that they said was really important for us to have was about building relationships. And it was something that I realized I was even missing, and even as I reflected in my SLI journal on relationships with people outside of just what I did, but rather for people to get to know me more for who I was. And so in that time, as I've transitioned from positions from family life and going back into the business world, I have gained more relationships and deeper relationships with people that have lasted. And it wasn't because I had some position in family life, but because people had begun to know me. I also developed a deeper relationship with Christ. That's something that I would tremendously always value for years to come. And so I'm hoping SLI and Family Life team will be encouraged in knowing that that I was one, that I was built up, and that they have sent out a stronger leader into the business world.
I'm here at the Supreme Court, and I am thinking about this Action Learning Challenge and what I've learned, and really humbled by the struggle that many people in our organization are still going through in order to just be at the same level as the majority of our organization. There's so many difficulties in just the financial support raising process, our cultural biases, the way that we unconsciously treat people who are different than us. And it's been humbling to learn about those things. I've desired to know that the work that we've done, the time and effort that we put into the solutions that we desire to see, our organization put into place that would help give more opportunities for people to grow in leadership and make decisions that impact our whole organization in ways that benefit both the ethnic minorities and the rest of us.
So as we transition to a segment of Q&A, let me tell you our names in case you have a question for each and every one of us. You can address us directly. My name is Jamit. It's Felicia. Sorry. No. Here's, okay. Alethea, Chris, Rob, and Renee. My mind is just saddened because Felicia's not here. So her absence here is intentionally planned as a symbol of what crew misses when qualified ethnic minorities are not considered for senior leadership or mission critical roles. So Felicia will not be participating in the Q&A. So we've thrown a lot of information at you this morning. A lot of information. 31 minutes worth of information. So, what do you think? What do you see? What are your questions? Where do you need clarification on with regards to the presentation and the proposal? So this is a Q&A open for anybody that you can ask a question and you can address any one of us. And Barry has the mic. So.
Do I have the first question?
Yes, I do. Knowing ethnic minorities who have tried joining staff and the depression that follows, feeling like a failure, not being able to raise support from joining, not being able to join staff, my question for you guys is, because U.S. wealth gap unfortunately includes majority Hispanics and Blacks, there is an invisible MPD glass ceiling that continues to eliminate Hispanics and Blacks retention and joining staff. Did you guys consider the invisible MPD glass ceiling when knowing you have to be a great fundraiser in order to stay on staff and to be a leader within crew?
What's your name, ma'am? Very pretty today. That's my wife, by the way. And that's a great question. Did we consider the MPD glass ceiling? And that's a great question. I know the perfect person who can answer this question. Chris.
Well, thank you. Yes, we looked into actually SLI6, you were part of, helped to do that, helped to look at the glass ceiling, look at the things that impacted the raising of support for our staff. And right now, they're still working on that. They're still working on making that happen. And we definitely see it's still a work in progress. It's impacting us in having the pool of people that would be available for these roles, having a diverse staff here too. And we heard many people say, even as you're moving up in leadership, you have less time to raise support. You're focused on so many other people who need your time. And so what are their ways? Is there even a possibility of financial incentive for our staff as they grow up in leadership to have more financial support, were some of the suggestions. But sadly, this was all outside of our scope, but it impacts what our pool of people who are available. So great question.
Got another question?
Hey, I'm Brian going to Family Life. Thanks so much. Great work. You mentioned that it's up to us as ministries to become more attractive to non-majority culture as organizations. Did you look at any of the characteristics of what would have to change in order to become more attractive to non-majority culture?
How do we become more attractive? Other than wearing a bow tie? No, I think, Rob, you take this question.
One of the things that came up over and over in the conversations was, I need to be able to see myself in leadership there. And so that is what gets to the question of how do we increase the percentage of non-dominant culture individuals on staff? And so that gets into some of the MPD barriers, that gets into some of the recruiting methods, and so that's why in our proposal we recommend continuing to work on SLI6's MPD presentation. We had a conversation with Jermaine Chapman about that, about the work that is still happening. That's why we want to propose that LDHR, OND, and mobilization work together to increase those numbers. And so a huge part is just increasing that they need to be able to see that I can fit here. This is an organization for me. We also need to know and begin to realize that the way we communicate looks very specific, is very, very specific to our culture and our community that we're in. And so we need to work and partner with people that have different voices, that have different experiences, and let them speak into what we create, as opposed to being the authorities that know what our audience needs. We need to let our audience speak to us, and even what if our audience helped in the creation of the types of outreach, the types of materials that they needed. So potential partner, and I think it's a great opportunity for partnership with some of the contextualized ministries within Crew, like Destino, like Impact, which was birthed out of Crew, like Nations. What would it look like to go to them and say, what do you need? And can we provide you resources in which to create something that would be impactful in your context?
Well, thank you for some great work. I love hearing the combination of use of data and creative solution. I'm interested in hearing more about the implementation on number 1 and number 3. So how many leaders and what kind of leaders do you think it would take for the roles that you propose? The oneness diversity strategists, the facilitators, the mentors. Give me some idea about the scope of that. And then what also do you think it would take to actually build out the PeopleSoft profile stuff, numbers of people, budget, stuff like that?
Great question, Andrea. So for the O&D strategist and the ethnic minority facilitator, we envision that being like one person being an O&D strategist serving on the LDHR core team, and one person serving as the ethnic minority facilitator on the O&D direct team. The O&D mentors, that could be expanded, we imagine starting out, recruiting even just 1 to 3 mentors who could give 5 to 15 hours a week. And starting out then with potentially, 15 to 20 candidates, kind of depending on how many we can recruit at the beginning to get it up and rolling. But we definitely see the opportunity for this to expand down the road, and potentially each ministry could have their own O&D mentor or multiple O&D mentors. And so we recognize that change takes time, and some of this takes time, and we're going to work out some kinks as we go. And so we imagine starting small with 1 O&D strategist, 1 ethnic minority facilitator, 1 to 3 O&D mentors, and expanding from there. And choosing those who would be those roles, we imagine that being a collaboration of O&D and LDHR working together to recruit and hire and fill those roles. For the PeopleSoft and getting that up and running with the employee snapshot, the big questions there I think really does fall around what do we want the tool to use? What do we want it to track, and getting it set up? The ladies that we worked with that in digital products and services said, once that's decided, we can figure it, we can set it up. It'll take like maybe a month. So actually getting it set up shouldn't be that difficult. It's just a matter of deciding what we want it to do. Its use of it is included in the cost of what we're already doing with PeopleSoft, and so there's no additional cost there unless there's some sideway costs of digital actually putting the time towards it. But any conversations we've had with Paula, Alexander, and others have been very supportive, and they're behind the use of it.
I'll just add to that, Andrea, just kind of the characteristics that you kind of mentioned and asked for. So some of it's listed in the proposal, but just cultural competency, like the culturally competent leader, and showing that they're willing to continue to grow in that it's an ongoing and not the box check that we like to do. A healthy unconscious bias, just an awareness of that. Just awareness of the staff development cycle, the coaching process. Those are some of the things that we would be looking for, and I would say O&D and LDHR as well would be looking for an individual to fill that role.
Yeah, I was just going to mention what Alethea was referencing in the appendix is a job description for all of these roles, if you want to reference that.
Tyrone Tompkins with the high school ministry. I want to say, again, great job. I thought it was really well done. But I have just 2 questions. How would you actually define a culturally competent team specifically? And what are some of the dangers long-term for the organization if we go on with non-culturally competent teams in leadership?
Thank you, Tyrone. Very much. This is so close to the heartbeat of this team. So day 1 of our team, we got together, and Felicia came up to us and she goes, okay, I know why me and Alethea and Jay are on this team. Why do you white people on this team? Why do you care about this? I want to know. And so Chris, Renee, and I shared our heart behind that. It opened us up to say something wrong. It was vulnerable. It was scary. I didn't know what Felicia was looking for. And so, but that exercise, that opportunity taken, drew our team together in a way that, had that not been asked, would have been a missed opportunity. What that showed was vulnerability, teachability, a willingness to say the wrong thing, and Jay, Alethea, and Felicia have had the courage to say, hey Rob, when you said that, this is what I heard. And I had to have the humility to receive that, regardless of my intent. Regardless of my intent. I didn't mean to offend. That doesn't matter. You did. And so my responsibility is to hear, receive, apologize, and then begin to change. And so I think vulnerability, the ability to hear with, regardless of intent, would be 2 key factors in culturally competent teams. And some of the dangers is, Brian, back to your question of how do we attract ethnic minority leaders and become the ministry more attractive, it completely shoots that in the foot. if we don't have that as a lead measure into you are in leadership because this is something that you exhibit, we will continue to run them off. We will continue to show that we don't actually value this because we are putting people that are going to be offensive and not teachable in that position. And so we will continue to lose them and they will not stay. They will not help us to grow and change, which we are all saying that we need to have happen. And so this is the ability of, I heard this morning about a kindergarten class that there's 3 white students, 3 black students, 2 Hispanics, 3 Asians, and then a few others that were multiracial children. That is the future. We will not be able to reach that future as we culturally are. And so we have a huge opportunity to begin to respond and change to that. Tyron, does that answer your question? Is there anything? Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I want to add to a willingness to learn. I came back from Crew 15 and 17 both bummed that, wow, why aren't we hearing all these great vision stories of the past, and this is a great rallying cry for the future of what we do in Crew. Like, what's all this talk about ethnicity, and why is this happening? Being in an office, I don't get as much of that opportunity to be on the campus and seeing the changes that are going on. So SLI, in the first, even readings before we started, had us read Divided by Faith. And that was where I first started to understand the context of why our country is the way it is and the privilege that's there, the way that the structures have built and kept people apart. And so that was where I first began to learn. And it's given me a heart and a compassion to say, what don't I know and what can I learn in order to be better and more effective in working with my brothers and sisters. So a willingness to learn, I say, was one of the competencies we want to see.
And I'll just add to that, Tyrone, the IDI that we mentioned, like we would love to see not just senior leadership take that, but all of our staff eventually take that. I haven't personally taken it, but just knowing those that have, that it is a pretty accurate gauge on kind of where you are when it comes to cultural competence. And then we also saw an example, it gives you kind of a growth plan, essentially like how do you continue to engage? Where did I thought I was and I wasn't there, so what do I need to do to continue to engage? And I would just add to that too, this is gonna sound so biased, but the Lenses Institute is also a great avenue, and the impact training. Like, yes, it's biased, but it's also true. The things that I have heard our staff, especially our dominant culture staff, just share about what they've been, the awareness that they now have, the openness, the, oh my gosh, I didn't know, and then what I've seen after. Like the very intentional ways that they are changing the way that they live, the way that they lead, the people they're engaging with. And so, it's not, some people it is a box check, but for the ones that aren't checking the box, it's like I've gone and now my heart is being transformed and I'm continuing to engage. That to me is a sign of a leader who is culturally competent and wanting to continue to grow in that. And I think there's a danger added to that if we don't change, is we're not going to be able to, we're not going to be able to recruit, we won't be able to retain our ethnic minority staff. Like, just to be 100% transparent in this moment, like I have asked the question multiple times, like, why am I still here? Like when I've joined a team where I'm the only ethnic minority out of 21 people at a national level, that's a question I have wrestled with a lot in the last few months. And so for me, it's God's called me to this. I'm gonna be obedient to God. And so I'm in it and I'm here. But I think that question, ethnic minorities have to ask that question a lot. So if we don't change, that was one of my fears of Crew 15 and Crew 17. This stuff is great and people are wrestling with this, but what happens if nothing actually changes? We will not just be able to recruit, we won't be able to retain the few ethnic minority staff that we have, and Crew will lose its relevance, I think, here in the US and in the world. That's just my opinion.
I think you would have time for one more brief. If anything, oh, it's mine, all right.
You guys are awesome, thanks. My name is Mark. I'm one of the leaders with Crew. I want to first of all just say thank you, and what a fantastic job the whole presentation was. From the environment that you set at the beginning about just the uncomfortability of the whole conversation, to the challenge that you asked all of us to consider, what will we do, to the research, just well done. I appreciate the different solutions that you've come up with. I do have one question, and I think it comes out of one of the sheets I saw here. It Said, in addition, our research shows inconsistency in the development that staff receive from their supervisors, which can affect the readiness to step into more roles. And you mentioned the great work that SLI does to develop leaders, but I want to go back to the context Mark Rutter said, that really our whole culture for development is based on those 5 E's. And Alethea, to your point that everybody is on a team somewhere in the system, so to speak. What did you discover as you looked at the research and you thought about ideas, and it may be in your proposal and I haven't seen it, but things that we could change in the current culture that would significantly accelerate how leaders are being developed at all levels, not just the different ideas that you brought up, which are fantastic, but in the system. Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah, good question, Mark. Thank you. Because we don't just want people who are part of SLI or part of the O&D leadership path to be developed. We want all of our staff to be developed. Crew values that. It's one of, we value growth. And so the staff development cycle is one way that Crew is desiring for everyone to be developed, to be working with their supervisor, to have 3 conversations a year, to be creating a position focus sheet, to be doing a professional development plan. And that was one of the things that we were looking at originally, is how to just help all of our supervisors do that better. I think something that we came down to is that that's not enough right now. If we need to address this issue, we need to do something more specific about it. But that is part of addressing this, is not just ignoring the staff development cycle. We want everyone to be developed. And so there is a section on here, strategic issues impacting all staff, where we talk about the staff development cycle. And one thing that I found as we were researching this was that there are a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of training. Some of the biggest hindrance to supervisors developing their staff that they gave in the survey was that they didn't know what to, well, the first one was they don't have time and capacity. So that's something that could be addressed. But the second issue was, I don't know what to do. I don't know what resources are out there. And I think Crew has the resources. It's just, how can we help supervisors know what resources are out there and feel trained and equipped to actually do the staff development cycle with their staff. So I do think that's important in addressing this, is we don't want to just do this. We do want all staff to be developed. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I was asking specifically for non-dominant staff in the context of the overall system. You answered it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, right? I wasn't thinking about just all staff in general, but yeah, more specifically. So thank you. Good job.
I know that there are probably many more questions that you have. So if you do have those questions, please drop them on the topic chat. And if you do, we'll continue the discussion, because a discussion or discussions create learning. And so before we leave, I have a question for you. Now, in this question, you can answer this question in your mind. And the question is, what would the impact on the Great Commission be if Crew were culturally relevant to Native Americans, Hispanics, African Americans, and Asian Americans? Thank you again for your time, your questions, and we have one more.
The United States is a diverse nation of people. Crew's senior leadership team understands that having a team of people which mirrors the people it is trying to reach will show the power of the gospel in a way that only words can't. With barriers such as unconscious bias and long-established dominant culture systems, how does Crew effectively ensure non-dominant culture leaders are considered when mission-critical roles become vacant? Daryl and Gwen Smith, Crew's National Directors of Oneness and Diversity, sponsored a senior leadership initiative project to help propose a tactical plan. After 6 months of research, the Action Learning Team concluded these 4 action steps would help Crew achieve its goal of building a more culturally and ethnically diverse senior leadership team. Number 1, create 3 new focused roles within Crew: Oneness and Diversity Strategist, Ethnic Minority Facilitator, and Oneness and Diversity Mentor. Number 2, train and spiritually grow candidates who seek senior leadership roles. Number 3, begin utilizing available features in PeopleSoft to track candidates' credentials. Number 4, implement a new best practice hiring process for filling vacant positions. As the OND team continues to seek alignment and implementing its next steps, one way it wants to align is with you. Learn more today by getting your electronic copy of the full proposal by simply emailing sli@crew.org with the subject SLI7 OND proposal.
Great job. I'm proud, like a proud mama. Okay. Mark has already given them a little bit of what he appreciated about what they did. We have time for just maybe 1 or 2 people to say, you know, I really liked this about what you did. Anybody ready to go here? Appreciation.
Bravo!
Guys, I just thought you worked so well together as a team. I thought your transitions were very seamless. Everyone was engaging. Your solutions were practical and yet inspiring. I thought you really did a good job.
Your Q&A, how you started that time with Felicia not being in the room was powerful for me because of what you brought to the team when you were here, beginning the presentation in that way, and then not having you here, that will really stick with me.
How many people noticed that? Okay, good job. Okay, what I'd like to do now is Gwen, as their sponsor, is going to come up and just share a few words with them about how she appreciates working with them and what she saw working with them.
Well, I am biased and I am so proud. Wow, they did an awesome, awesome job, and I want to say thank you to all of you. We, 6 months ago, we met in San Antonio when we first started talking about this issue, and it was very complex because as they were trying to get information from me, I'm like, I don't even know that myself. Because it was so new, being that our role is very new. So as we began to talk through some of the different complex issues that we were dealing with around the organization, and they took it and they just started building on it and working it. And I just want to say thank you so much, because Daryl and I, there's no way we would have been able to pull this off without them. Without the work that they put into it. They would call and ask questions or about who can they reach or talk to about different things, and they took it and they did it, and again, did a phenomenal job. And as Felicia opened up just talking about being at the table and Jesus being there with the disciples, the one thing that came to my mind was when Jesus told them that, one of you are going to betray me. And not that nobody here is going to betray or anything like that. But again, sometimes the enemy uses us in ways when there is a bigger mission that something that we need to accomplish. He uses us, all of us at times. But one of the things that happened is they all began to want to search their own hearts, and they were asking, Lord, is it me? And so, as we think through this, because this is a mission that is not just for one specific division that came out of a division, but this is about Crew growing in a way. And so, all of us have to ask that question, Lord, what is it, that I may be thinking or doing or whatever, that I may be hindering this mission from moving forward? And so I think that's something that we all can pray in this. And so I'm going to ask Daryl to come up and give a few words as well, because he put me out on this challenge, being new to leadership in the organization and all of this. He was like, why don't you do it? Why don't you lead out in it? So I want to also allow him to speak into it, because he was in on a lot of the conversations. And then we have something we would like to present to the team.
Thanks, Gwen. When we look at this, for me, this is about us finding the will of God for each individual person's life. And the reality, we all have biases, conscious and unconscious. that keep men and women from stewarding what God have called them to do. We see it in Acts 10. Peter, who loved the Lord, he's a Jewish Christian. His bias, his culture bias as a Jew was against Gentiles, that the Gentiles could not be part of the body of Christ, of the Holy Spirit, shouldn't be on them. You think about that. A believer is keeping another person who have a heart for God from being in the kingdom. We all can do that. And then when you get to Acts chapter 11, after God do a work, the Holy Spirit do a work in Peter's life, he go to the leaders in Acts chapter 11, and they said, and they took issue with him. In all our hearts, we can take issue with things that are even God's will, because culturally there's things that we all have. And so this challenge is not about pushing majority culture people out and bringing ethnic minorities in. This challenge is not about that. This challenge is about how do we not allow our biases, conscious and unconscious, keep men and women who God has raised up, who he want to raise up, to live out their mission and call. And so we appreciate everybody who, you all are part of that and running your team. And so we are grateful, and we are hopeful to see what God will do, where everybody will have opportunity to know Christ and make him known. We proclaim him, admonishing every man, teaching every man, that we may present every man mature in Christ. That's the hope and the goal in this.
So real quick, our time is up. We just want to say thank you. Here's a little gift. And I'm just going to ask somebody. It's two different gifts, but there's a real. I just want to so you can read it. Well, probably theirs might be easy. I don't know. Just fine. Just got to write it time. So I know we need another water bottle in crew. But there is a message on here that says, a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. And so I want to encourage you all as future leaders continuing moving forward in crew and say thank you again.
Much, Gwen and Daryl, for all the input you've had with the team. I know you guys are ready for a break. We're going to have a 15-minute break. You're supposed to be back at 10:20, but please be back a little bit before, because the next presentation will start right at 10:20, so you want to be in your seats and not miss any of that. Remember to turn on your phone and look at your topic chat. I think we can put the directions. Okay, directions are up there again. If you have questions, Joe Dewey is in the room, and he can help you with that. Let me say just one word about the proposal. I'll say it.